Hi, welcome back. Our previous lesson was on how changes in income affect the budget constraint. Today we'll be looking at how changes in prices affect the budget constraint. So let's recall that the budget constraint shows the feasible consumption bundles given income and prevailing prices. Now we have seen in our last lesson that income changes alone causes a parallel shift of the budget line without a change in the slope. If income increases, the budget constraint shift parallel to the right, and if income decreases, the budget constraint shift parallel to the left. Let's move on to a change in price, first starting with a decrease in the price of good X. Let's go back to our consumer named Ella, who has an income of £100 per week and consumes two good X and good Y. And the price of good X is £5 and the price of good Y is £10. Now we see from our previous lesson that given this information, budget line is represented as 5x plus 10y, which is equal to 100, with a slope of minus 5 divided by 10, which is the relative prices of the two goods, equal to minus 0.5. This budget can be represented with this figure here, where the x-intercept is equal to 20 and the y-intercept is equal to 10, given the prices and the income that we have. So B1 represents the budget that we have here. Let's move on to when prices of good X changes without a change in the price of good Y. The first thing we are going to do is now write our new budget. So if the price of good X changes to X prime, which is equal to 2, then we have our new budget as 2x plus 10y equals 100. So the price of good Y is still the same and income is also the same, but the price of good X now decreased from 5 to 2. So let's first start with our intercept and then draw our budget line. Our new x-intercept showing the maximum amount of good X that Ella can buy if she doesn't buy any of good Y is 2x plus 10, which is Y is now 0 because Ella doesn't buy any of good Y, equals 100. So with this information, we have our x-intercept as X being equal to 50. And then for Y, the y-intercept is if Ella doesn't buy anything of good X and spends all her income buying Y, this is going to be Y is equal to 10. Now you can see that y-intercept has not changed because the price of Y has not changed. So the slope of this new budget is going to be the new price of good X, which is 2, divided by the price of good Y, which is still 10. So let's look at how this new budget is going to look on the graph. So our x-intercept increased from 20 to 50, which is here, but the y-intercept remains unchanged. So if we now connect these two lines, we have a new budget line, which is pivoting along the y-axis. So what does this mean? If the price of a good decreases, then it means that given the same income, the consumer can now afford to buy more of that good. So this is what is represented here. So if Ella spends all her income buying X, initially all she could buy is 20 units. But with the new price, which is now £2 per unit, Ella can buy 50 units of good X, which is more. But then for Y, because the price of Y has not changed, the maximum amount of Y that Ella can buy still remains the same given her income and the price of good Y. So we have B2 being our new budget line given the old income, old price of good Y, and then the new price of good X. So the next thing we see here is that the slope of B1 is not the same as the slope of B2. Before the change in the price of good X, B1 slope was minus 0.5, and now the new slope is minus 0.2. 2. The new slope simply reflects the fact that market now allows people to trade less of good Y to get an additional unit of good X. So previously the trade-off was 0.5 and now the trade-off is 0.2, which is the slope of the two curves. So this analysis is analogous to when the price of good Y decreases without a change in the price of good X. Now let's see what happens when there's an increase in the price of good Y without a change in the price of good X. So remember, with our original budget line as 5x plus 10y equals 100, our budget is represented by B1 with the initial intercept of x as 20 and the initial intercept of y as 10, and the slope of this curve was minus 0.5. Assuming the price of good Y increases to 20, so we have Py prime is equal to 20. The first thing we do is to write our new budget. So our new budget is simply going to be 5x, which is the original price of good X, plus 20y, with the new price of good Y equals to 100. Our income has not changed. And then the intercept of x also remains the same because the price of good x has not changed. So if Ella buys only good x, we have yx plus 20, 0 here equals 100. And with this information, we have the x-intercept remaining at 20. And then the new intercept of y is 5, 0. If Ella buys nothing of good x, plus 20y equals 100, which is y being equal to 5. So we can see that with the increase in the price of good y, the maximum amount that Ella can now buy, given the income of 100 per week, is 5. Now the slope of this new graph is going to be minus 5, which is the price of good x, divided by 20, which is the price of good y, being equal to minus 0.25. So let's look at the graph to see our new budget line. So we see that because the price of good x didn't change, the intercept remained at 20, but the price of good y decreases. So it means the budget line is going to pivot inwards. So we have the intercept of y at 5. So what this simply means is if Ella doesn't buy any of good x at the initial level of income and prices, the maximum amount of y Ella could buy was 10. But now with the increase in the price of y to 20, given the income of 100, Ella can now afford to buy less of good y if y is the only thing that Ella is buying. So Ella can now buy only 5 units. Now this pivots our budget line from B1 to B2. The new slope is also smaller, which is minus 0.25. So as we said before, the slope indicates the trade-off between good x and good y, and a different slope means that the market has now adjusted the rate at which the two goods are traded. So this analysis is analogous to when the price of good x increases without a change in price of good y. In summary, what we have seen in our lesson today is that when the price of one good changes and the other things stay the same, the budget line moves along the axis of the good whose price has changed. So if the price goes up, the line pivots inwards. If the price goes down, the line pivots outwards. So this is all that we have on our lesson on how the change in price of a good affects the budget constraint. Our next lesson will be on non-linear budget constraints. If you enjoyed today's lesson, consider subscribing. Thank you.